Welcome back, Streamer Nation. I'm your host, Michael Simeone, and you're listening to the SP Streamer Podcast, which is part of the Fantrax and FantraxHQ.com family. Let's bring in my co-host, Lauren. What's going on, Lauren?
Not much, not much. Doing good. Just a little bummed, about the baseball news and stuff. But been kind of keeping myself. I have lots of baseball things to keep myself busy with. It's been a couple drafts, doing this stuff, some baseball, creating baseball content. So it's good. It's a good. I've got baseball distractions, and I just kind of keep thinking.
How is your TGFBI league doing in terms of draft speed?
Oh. It is so slow, and it's a little painful. We're one of the slower leagues, and I'm very envious because I think you are
I'm in the
fastest league. What pick are you guys on?
Oh, I don't even.
Are you finished? Are you done?
I wish. No. Well, I'll tell you right now. We are in round 18.
We just went into round 9.
Wow. So we're twice as fast as you.
Mm-hmm. You guys have, your stuff.
Yeah, we have a really good group in Twitter. We made a DM group. Obviously, a lot of leagues do that, and like everyone is super active. And it's actually surprising because a lot of people in our league are, some of them are in like completely different time zones, and like everyone just really sets auto picks. So it's just been like perfect.
So yeah, perfect. I'm very jealous of it.
All right, let's bring on our guest. He's that of MLB at FTN Fantasy. He's an NFBC high stakes winner. He has come in first in 14 RotoWire online championships, if I counted correctly. He is the Fab Whisperer, and he is the great Vlad Sedler. What's going on, Vlad?
Hey, what's up, Michael? Good to talk to you, and Lauren, you as well. So very excited to be here and talk to my my fellow East Coast colleagues. So I'm representing here on the West Side.
Yeah.
So you just joined. This will be your first season with FTN, right?
That's right. So just in time for the beginning of the NFL season, which I don't know if that's a word. Those are letters or an
They're
acronym.
allowed.
I shouldn't be saying. Yeah. They're allowed. Okay, cool.
They're allowed.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. So yeah, first year and then first full baseball season. So just basically running content there, and already had a fabulous team in place, people that I had already worked with in the past, and just kind of put together a plan. Obviously had yourself, Michael, as a part of our draft kit and draft guide that came out for that one article, which was really cool. And yeah, just in kind of full stream of things. It's been fun for a few months, and a little bit of a pause, I guess, with unfortunate news, but hey, it's something good is going to come out of it. It's, what is it? Lightest before dawn, dark. I don't know, whatever. So
something like that.
Yeah. I was going to say, I actually can't think of it. But yeah, I know what you're saying. How about you, Vlad? Are you into GFBI?
I am. Yeah.
Okay. How's your league doing?
It's good. It's kind of like, it's a good pace. I think the fact that we have a group chat is helping out a little bit, to kind of, push things a little bit, kind of give a little bit of crap if people are taking a little bit, a little too long. But I mean, it's all in fun, right? I mean, nobody's timing out. We're not having any major issues. I think we're in round 8. So it's not going.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not super fast, but around 10, I'm sorry. Yeah. So not super fast, not too slow, but so far so good.
Well, that's good. Yeah, so, I mean, we wanted to bring Vlad on, which, by the way, you can follow him on Twitter if you somehow don't follow him already, at RotoGut, to talk about a little bit of strategy, and then some stuff he does over at FTN. So we're going to talk about assessing risk. So I actually was excited to really bring you on, Vlad, because I draft complete opposite of you. I am like super, super conservative. I don't like taking a lot of risks, but I think that kind of hinders, I guess I want to say like my upside. I think that kind of hinders of what I can do in terms of playing fantasy. So I thought it'd be interesting to have you on, just because I actually tend to have a different view than you in terms of, who you draft, that kind of stuff. So like I said, you tend to draft teams. I don't want to say that you draft with, a lot of risk, because it's not true. Obviously, everything you do is pretty calculated, but you've been successful with taking risks at the right times. So can you talk a little bit about taking risks and how to do it
Mhm.
properly where you can be like successful at doing it?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything is most importantly it's format dependent, and so over the last 4 years, or not four, like half decade or so, the reason why some of my teams made me look that way is because I'm playing in competitions with an overall prize. Where if I win a league, it's obviously I'm happy about that. That is a goal, but the main goal is I'm chasing these six-figure prizes that are huge,
Right.
and just really everything has to go absolutely splendidly. And when competing in these leagues, it's not like a take upside after upside pick or a bunch of injury risks or this year trying to build a team with Verlander, Sales, Strasburg, and Carrasco.
Yeah.
But there's a certain element of that I think is important throughout your draft. It's almost sort of like sprinkling in some of the more of the upside, I guess you could say. So every player I feel is inherently risky in some way. Even safe guys can have some sort of freak thing happen to them, and of course anything is possible. But yeah, it depends on the format. I think years ago when I was playing more home leagues, Yahoo leagues, satellite leagues, basically leagues without that overall component. There are different strategies in place. You can obviously even punt a little bit in certain categories and things like that. But just kind of the way I'm wired. And then I have lots of friends who, like you just mentioned, Michael, draft a little bit differently. Yeah, a good friend of mine, Scott Genstad, who I've actually learned a lot from in the NFBC about NFBC back in probably 10 years ago. Every time I look at his team, I'm like, what is this like boring, crap? Kyle Seager again, like just like the most, like just guys on, and he's always, up there in the overall and winning his leagues. Not every year, but same thing with Rob Silver. Like I'm looking at these teams sometimes, I'm like, I don't know, I just can't get into it, but somehow it just works because it's part of this large formula. It involves also, making sure you're taking advantage of the format of NFBC of half week periods of making sure you're streaming the right pitchers, you're taking care of your ratios, you're kind of having a balance of everything, and then managing in free agency as well. So kind of a long story short, for me, it's just sort of like an interspersed risk and hopefully like the right type of risk and not just kind of a reckless style.
Right. So you kind of sprinkle this injury risk in. Does that or risk in? How about is that the same thing with injury risk? Are you willing to take on pitchers with forearm issues, or are there any kind of injuries that you're not willing to take a risk on?
I feel like as I've gotten older, more mature, and understanding my competition, and maybe maturity isn't that has nothing to do with it, but just as I'm getting older, I catch myself being more mindful of taking injury risks, for example, because just so many lessons along the way that I've learned where your instinct almost tells you when you draft someone, you're like, I really like the name. I just kind of feeling things that are going to work out this year. And then they just don't work out. And you know why. It's for very obvious reasons. And so there are certain types of injuries. Like, I remember Ian Desmond, fractured his wrist a few years ago in spring training. And it's just like, hands, shoulders, elbows for hitters, intercostal, whatever it's called. And then pitchers, obviously anything having to do with the arms, forearm, wrist, I just don't want really any part of it. There's really no reason for me to almost put myself behind the eight ball in those type of positions. Later in the draft, maybe somebody that had, it could be considered injury prone from past seasons. If they're healthy going into camp, then that's a situation that I'm more okay with. But essentially anyone that is just hurt in spring training, there's no reason for me to go. It's a huge player pool.
Right.
So someone like, so I guess I would say any of these pitchers that, like, let's just say Noah Syndergaard, right? So if he like came into spring training and looked healthy, is that enough for you to kind of change your mindset based on them? Like, because I mean, Syndergaard specifically, like, he did pitch at the end of the year, but it's not like he wasn't allowed to throw a slider. So like we didn't really see him healthy. So if you see him healthy in spring training, is that enough to change your mind where, okay, I kind of want to target him on some teams now? Or would you still kind of stay away and want to see him perform for, I guess, an entire season first?
Yeah, so there are a couple of important factors there. It's what is my rotation up at that point in the draft,
Right.
and do I have any of those other type of guys who were very low on innings restrictions in the previous year, and do I have a team that doesn't feel sound where I can take on the risk of somebody like Syndergaard who could potentially just throw 50 innings and hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
The other factor, of course, is price. So if he's going right now around 225 overall, and he's going to have there's going to be an immediate impact by the market on his price. And if it shoots up 50 spots for me, that may not be a position I want to take a risk in, especially if, him moving up into a range of guys like, maybe less exciting, but, the Framber Valdez's of the world, Pablo Lopez's, if he's now jumping into that range of pitchers, I might be less willing to go there. But the thing is, there's going to be wild movement. Like as soon as we get into camp and a lot of these pitchers we haven't seen throw for a while, there's going to be major movement. I just mentioned Carrasco, for example. If he looks good, his 300 ADP pops up, 75 spots for all we know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a lot of talk about, can you lose your draft in the first round?
Mm-hmm.
Which I kind of lean towards no, but are you someone also who tries to mitigate risk in the first round or two, where you just are really looking for, you
Mm-hmm.
obviously no one's guaranteed, like you mentioned, like anyone could get hurt at any time,
Mm-hmm.
but are you trying to, take guys that have as minimum risk as possible, or do you sometimes kind of like to live on the edge there that early in a draft?
Yeah, I'm early on in the draft. I don't feel like there's really a reason to. You just want to get some luck in terms of health, because if you look back to last season in the first round, everybody kind of dealt with the injury bug at some point. If it wasn't Trout out for the year, and Juan Soto missed some time, Fernando Tatis with the shoulder, Acuna, unfortunately, like most people got hit there. Obviously Jose Ramirez was solid. Guy hasn't been injured in a while, and Trey Turner, of course, was fantastic. I just want to get some luck on that end. I don't need to take giant splashes or whatnot, but also, yeah, I mean, it just depends. I pointed out on a podcast the other day how last year was the first year ever in the main event, which is kind of the grandfather of the NFBC games. He only about probably about 600 people in that overall contest, but a nice prize. I think it's like 150,000. Last year, Phil Dussault won with Jacob deGrom in the first round. It was the first year since 2004 that a pitcher was drafted on a winning team in the main event. The irony of it also, the top 5 teams overall all had a different pitcher that didn't earn value as their first round pick. So we're talking,
it's crazy.
Aaron Nola 15th, someone took Bieber, like there was somebody that took, Giolito, even he was kind of like the highest ranked, but it was just kind of wild how well those teams ended up managing, and then, getting the Robbie Rays late, the Logan Webbs, and everything just kind of worked out for them. I think it was kind of an anomaly, right? It was weird because there were so many busts, but just even thinking back to reading the Forecaster for years, and Ron Chandler always does this little in his intro talking about the first round, and how essentially it's like 45 to 55% end up not even coming close to earning value every year. So you're kind of playing the odds there. You're just hoping you're getting somebody that isn't going to, tomorrow I have a draft, a 12-team online championship where I have the number 1 pick. The good on my shoulder is saying just take Trey Turner, and then this one's saying take Tatis, so I haven't decided yet what type of risk I want to take. It's good timing on the question.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to 12-team leagues. I want to kind of focus on, you do a lot of RotoWire championships on NFBC, which is 12-team leagues. I noted that last year you entered 7. You cashed out in 4 and won 2 of them. So obviously you did really well. So for people who play in 12-team Roto leagues, what are some tips you could give them in terms of how you kind of target, how you approach the drafts for them? Yeah,
that's more of an upside format. Obviously, it's it's not a cheap, yeah, it's not a very cheap entry. It's essentially mid stakes. It's a $350 entry. And, there are a lot of people that have just have done well in NFBC. I mean, obviously you've got the rich people, whatever, but you also have people that have kind of earned their way in. They've won a few leagues, they've earned some money. That's what they want to play on. So the more teams you have, the more you can kind of treat them a little bit more like, I don't want to say lottery tickets, but you can take a little bit more risk. If you're playing just one of these 12-team online championships, obviously you want to sort of draft your optimal set of players. But in general, you are sort of shooting for that blend of solid with upside, and really you just want to hit those late round gems. The Teoscars from a couple years ago, just those guys that just end up really making a splash. The one thing I would recommend people entering 12-teamers now, sort of like a few weeks before the season starts, hopefully, is we're going to have a free agent bidding period before the season starts. So don't worry too much about about like filling backups or making sure you have a certain amount of pitchers with those final few picks. Use those final few picks on players that could eventually go for a lot of money in Fab, and just kind of take a stab at the upside guys, because you're going to end up having some drops eventually. Like even myself on a couple 12-teamers, I've taken Adley Rutschman, who I don't know if I necessarily would, but the fact that I know there's a free agent period, if for whatever reason he doesn't start in the majors, there's like a Danny Jansen. There's somebody there that I can just pick up that first week who can kind of fill the role until he gets called up. So I'm kind of thinking more like not just for today, but how my team's going to sort of start off for the first few weeks.
Yeah, you bring up Fab. What are some tips that you have for Fab?
I mean, with Fab, I mean, it's
read his article. read Vlad's weekly article. That's his tip.
I mean, well, my writing the article helps me with my own work, because I'm really making sure that I'm not missing any holes. Like I'm kind of covering the entire player pool. I'm looking ahead. I think that's the most important thing, is looking ahead. Not just kind of in the short-term period, like, oh, this player is going to Coors. Like everybody knows that, everyone's going to kind of go after him, but maybe taking it a step further, I think, is important in terms of, what's their schedule look like for the next couple of weeks? Can I get ahead of somebody on some players? And you just want to beat on market price. You want to basically, like, if you see like a reliever, for example, is starting to kind of falter, blowing saves here and there. I mean, everybody kind of knows and sees it, but if you can pick up sort of closer and waiting for a couple of dollars instead of having to pay market price when everybody's spending 20-30% of their budgets, right, I think that's very valuable.
Yeah.
Do you set yourself with a limit as to how much you're willing to spend, like, ever on one player in Fab?
I end up just spending a lot on closers. I feel like, or at least I did the last couple of years. Even like when I have closers, it's a really weird thing. You
just want all of them.
Well, yeah, I don't want to be. It's like this. I don't know. It's this thing where I just don't feel. I don't want to be short on saves, or I don't want to have to overspend. So I'm kind of throwing like lower bid amounts, but like over time, you're just ending up like kind of spinning your wheels, like picking up, dropping guys. I remember. I don't think I've ever spent half my budget for any player. I think a few years ago when Correa, came up, or, even Trout, I remember maybe like 300-400, but man, you got to kind of be aggressive. If there's really somebody that stands out, if, for example, the season starts and Philadelphia doesn't sign a closer, Corey Knebel hurts himself early in the season, and it's Jose Alvarado just crushing it. You just know what's going to happen in that scenario. Like, you're going to have to spend a lot of money for that player if you want him on your team. So then you have to, at that point, remember, hey, it's a very long season. Is he the guy that I want to sort of blow that budget on? Because every week, or almost every week, there's always some sort of closer that's popping up, and you just don't know if you're going to hit the gold on it or not, basically.
Do you happen to have like a budget for at different points in the season? Because I know I've heard people talk about how early in the season, they're more willing to spend a ton on a player if they think that it's just a game changer for them, but yet at the same time, they still want to have room at that back end. You don't want to blow your budget all at once, but you still want to have room at that back end, but also balancing it with this idea that, even if you have money at the back end, if you don't spend it, that never really helped you. So it's kind of balancing all that out, right?
Yeah, I do kind of have a rough rule that I feel like a lot of NFBC players do is just saving some funds for the end of the season because you want to have some advantage of outbidding league mates when you have certain categories that you're chasing. And, you know, for example, a good two-start pitcher comes up in the first week of September and you don't have enough money to kind of, you know, to make sure you get him. You just have a couple dollars. You're going to end up getting your fifth, sixth conditional down the line. So you definitely want to save some money for the end of the season. This past season was particularly tough, even for me, because I think there was a hangover from the shortened 2020 season where we had so much money and you almost had to spend quicker because it was just, you know, a third of a season. And I think that translated into 2021 where a lot of people were spending their budgets early. The other good thing, especially, you know, why, I mean, like these 12-team RotoWire online championships, like it's not like, you know, like people can win these leagues because it's just like any other league. Like people drop out for whatever reason. People get into football. They, you know, they just don't care. They forgot a fab period, so they've given up. So you have more freedom to kind of get the players you want in the second half of the season because you really do have a lot of people that end up giving up.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the year, are you? I know I've heard a lot of people say that they get very aggressive, like the last couple of weeks, where they really look at matchups and like they're willing to dump, guys who have been on their team all year just for those specific matchups to get, I guess, certain categories, stuff like that. Do you believe in that to a point, or do you kind of believe in sticking with the guys who got you there and like maybe that's getting too cute with it? How do you kind of address like those final few weeks in the season?
Yeah, I mean, you got to be able to cut players off at a certain time when they're no longer useful to you, and that's what happens, especially with maybe a start, you know, or like a good pitcher just doesn't have good matchups coming up, and there's someone better that you can pick up for, you know, for two starts, you know, down the stretch, or you just kind of see they have a more advantageous schedule. We owe nothing to these players that have done well for us at a certain point if we don't see the value in them for the remainder of the season. So at that point, we're just like, you know, it's roto for the most part that I'm playing. So I'm chasing specific categories. I'm going after things that I need. If I'm low on wins and strikeouts and I'm good with ratios, then I know exactly what I'm attacking. I can kind of help. Other places like batting average, it's more difficult, right? I mean, you know, you hope because a certain guy is going, you know, to face certain pitchers, you just kind of see they have just like a set of matchups against really bad pitchers, and maybe that will help their average. You just never know. But something in tangent to that, I feel like one big mistake, and this is Lauren related to your fab question, is I feel like a lot of people chase what players have done recently as opposed to what they're going to do. So they're paying top of market for just what just happened. And then they kind of forget about the up and down. And that happens a lot with like catchers, for example, like, you're spending extra money that's unnecessary on like Martin Maldonado because he just is coming off like his one hot week of the year. You overpay for him. As soon as you pick him up, he starts to, crap the bed. And so the important part there is looking at who are they facing, right? Like if they're going to Baltimore or Coors or whatever, like, hey, maybe, there's some good matchups there, but if you're facing the Dodgers, the Mets, and these good pitching staffs, then, hey, that's probably not a good move.
I think it's so hard when it comes to that because you think of almost, like FOMO, you're afraid of missing out. Like you'll see a player play really good for a week or two and you're like, I don't think he's going to be that good moving forward, but what if he keeps this up and he is a game changer? So I think that's what makes it so hard, for people, is because you always think of the what if, and you don't want to miss out, and you want to be part of that if they do take off. So I think that's definitely one of the hardest things to do when it comes to adding and dropping players. And I think it was something that Phil Dussault was just so good at, and that's why he is able to do what he does. NFBC added that new feature. I don't know if you saw, Vlad. I'm assuming you did.
Yeah.
Where you could do fab bids across the board on all your teams. I guess. I mean, we haven't really seen it in action yet, but how excited are you for that? And are you going to join more fab leagues because of it?
No, unfortunately. I would love to. Just now with two kids at home and just busy and stuff. Last year was my max. Like I played 12 fab leagues where usually I would play 6 or 7, and it was just tough. And this, of course, because I was doing a bunch of draft champions, the 50-round draft and holds, you got to set lineups in those things too. So, you just catch yourself kind of behind on time. And so I want to really give my max effort on my fab team. So it will be a very helpful feature. It'll kind of help streamline things, of course, but I don't know if that's going to lead me to more fab leagues. Although you never know. I mean, if this lockout keeps going, I may keep drafting teams. So we'll see.
Did you have they demoed it? Have you seen it demoed or anything?
There's something out there, or I think through the message board. I think there are some instructions for it, or like a video. But I haven't looked at it yet. I haven't seen it.
Okay, because I was curious, because I mean, obviously, I know the way that you do fab is you do it, based on a percentage of what your remaining budget is. So I'm wondering, like, if you go to add one player for every league, can you enter the different bid amounts per league? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm curious as to how it works. So I feel like you'd have to almost be able to do that to make it technically easier on you. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. Really cool feature that they came out with, though. It's really smart of them.
I'm just looking forward to getting to it, right? Because that means we're in the middle of a season.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know. I'm doing RotoWire championships for the first time this year.
Nice.
I think I'm going to do 2 of them. So we'll see. But
do you have you thought about your like KDS? Like about the KDS in those?
Yeah, I've done. Last year I did a bunch of 50s just to kind of see how I play out. So no fab, but I know all. Yeah.
Because that's what I was going to ask. Like, you have
I
don't know if you can share. I don't know if you are willing to kind of give that. But do you have like a preferred area? Have you thought about, like, would you rather have like a Trey Turner, Tatis, one of those guys? Are you comfortable with the back end?
So what's funny is I really wanted the front end this year, but I've done a bunch of DC 50s so far. I'm trying to stick to just 12 teams right now, and every time I have the worst luck. My KDS, I always get the back end of the draft, and at this point now, I've like really figured out the back end. So now I'm kind of leaning maybe going towards the back end, because I finally have figured out how, who I'd like to take and how I'd like to go about the draft. And
what that is, right? That's KDS karma. There's the whole thing. If you're doing a bunch of these, like the smaller drafts, and then you're just getting what you don't want, that idea, I'll knock on wood for you, but that means when you get to your online championships, you'll get like whatever pick you want. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
That's how the karma works,
All right. Well, I hope so. But it's good though too, because now, I mean, if I do aim for the front and say I end up getting the back, at least I know what to do. So. So that helps.
Yeah.
All right. So I wanted to bring up, I know, I'm only in one head-to-head league. I know, Vlad, you said you don't really do them anymore. Lauren, are you in any head-to-head?
No, I've actually never played a head-to-head league in baseball.
Ever. Okay. So I wanted to bring it up because there has been conversation about really, our listeners, I know, specifically is, not everyone is geared toward NFBC. A lot of people play these regular leagues on Yahoo and stuff like that. So while we don't really all play in it, at least, Vlad is obviously an established player. So obviously anything we have to say about it, I think, can still be somewhat valuable. So I wanted to bring up head-to-head leagues a little bit. So in a head-to-head league, Vlad, if say you were entering one, how would your strategy change? Like, would you kind of sacrifice certain categories, or would you try and do like a balanced approach, so this way you have a shot to win every week? Kind of, how do you think you would approach a head-to-head draft?
Yeah, I mean, that's where I got my start, and obviously playing a lot of head-to-head category leagues on Yahoo, kind of around college, and for me that's ages ago. It's like the early 2000s, late 90s, but and a lot of the theories are very similar, and I think you can get away with certain things, especially if it's a little different, I think, with head-to-head categories versus head-to-head points, but you have a little bit more freedom to not have to be balanced, and you really can get away with it. Of course, a lot of it has to do with the players that you're hitting on, and making sure that you are kind of getting the right guys, but it's a little different these days because back then you had a lot more of the speedsters. A lot of the guys,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, not exactly these guys, but the Malik Smith, the Billy Hamiltons of the world, where those are far and few between now. Like now you're seeing in the first few rounds, it's not like no steals from Albert Pujols, Mark Teixeira, and Nolan Arenado, these guys that were used to be like always in the first round. Now you got guys with stolen bases, so you're having more balance. The studs these days, they do give you a little bit of back, so you're kind of getting sort of all the points and a little bit spread across the categories. But I do think there are certain things you can, maybe punt. I think this would be a fantastic year to punt saves specifically in the format and it's not exactly punt. It's almost you wait a little bit to maybe you don't have to pay top dollar for the studs. Like maybe you have a strong feel that, hey, even though maybe the Cincinnati Reds might stink, I feel really good about Lucas Sims, and I just think he's going to be the man. So nobody really wants him or into him. You can get him way late, so you can still be competitive in that category, but you don't have to spend top dollar. You can focus your concentration on getting the stud starting pitchers, getting all the strong bats, and just fielding like a really good lineup that's going to be competitive every week.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm in one head-to-head league. I've been in this league since I was in high school, like a long time. And it's actually 16 teams.
Oh wow.
But yeah, it's really fun though. But yeah, I tend to actually go the route that you said, Vlad. I actually co-manage it with someone, and we go for a very even approach, but we always just waited on saves. One of the reasons is because me and my co-manager tend to be very good at finding saves on the wire. So that helps. But we just felt like it was almost an easy category to sacrifice and just try and take spec guys later and kind of find them later on. So we've actually been doing that strategy ourselves. What do you think, Lauren? Would you kind of take the similar approach, or?
Yeah, I think so. I tend to be kind of a risk averse player anyway, and try and kind of do balanced stuff as well. But if you're good at finding steals or saves or something later, then stick to your strengths and do that.
Yeah. I know some guys too in the league who, which is also I think a viable strategy, where they don't even care about stolen bases. They just go all these power bats who have decent average too, and they just try and make sure that every week they're winning on batting average, home runs, run, and RBIs, and then they don't care about steals, and then they rely on their pitching staff.
Yeah, and I was going to say specifically to this year, the reason why you're seeing these these crazy things that we've never seen before, like Hendricks and Hader going in the second round of drafts, is because in Roto and right now there isn't a huge there aren't a lot of solid stable closers, and so in the head-to-head format, there's really no reason to spend up on those guys, especially with just so much unknown at the position. A lot of things will come. There will always be some sort of saves this year, I think, on the wire, especially the way teams are more sort of spreading it across their own team. You're going to see more teams like the Rays do what the Rays have been doing.
Yeah. So in a head-to-head, obviously you face an opponent every week. Would you try to exploit an opponent's weakness? Like, let's say they don't have a lot of guys who will get saves, but you have like two good. I feel like that's a bad.
Yeah.
What's it called? Or let's say they don't seem to have a lot of power. Would you try and put in more power bats than go with like the typical guys that you would play, and just like playing your best players? Like would you play the matchup as opposed to starting your best players and just kind of seeing how it goes?
Yeah, it's a good question. I haven't thought about that in a few years. I'm trying to think back to what I did. I think it's almost a blend of it, because you kind of want to put your best lineup forward. You're putting yourself in the best position, but you have to acknowledge your own team's weaknesses and make sure that you're playing to your strengths and to your opponent's weaknesses. So I think there is a balance, and I think it is important. You have to look and see how that team is set up and almost set your lineup accordingly. There's a different strategy there, and it's really unique. That's kind of what I like and miss about that format.
Yeah. I mean, I tend to put my best players in at least for like the first half of the week, and then kind of adjust going there on out to try and exploit their weakness type of thing. But yeah, I think head to head is like kind of underrated, honestly.
Yeah.
I understand why people don't like it, but I do kind of almost feel like there is just as much strategy there because you have so many different things to look at and different avenues that you could go. So I don't know. It's also the first format I ever played back when I was in high school. So I think that's kind of why I always have a love for it as well. So
I think if like, one day, like just the dream where I'm just like, just a full-time, not even like not writing, not working, and I'm just like playing fantasy baseball, which would just be sweet. That's when I was sort of kind of diverge. And there are actually a few NFPC guys. Yeah. We have, a couple of guys where like even an example, there's a guy his wife was like, hey, babe, you're doing pretty good at this. And, I'm doing well. Let's just go for it. So he's just like a full-time fantasy player. It's amazing. It's the dream.
Wow.
And so I think in that scenario would be when like, okay, I'm going to be doing guillotine leagues. I'm going to be doing keeper leagues. I'm going to kind of really mix it up.
Yeah.
And I think the only reason why I'm just kind of sticking to, pretty much just NFPC and just Roto is because it keeps it simple for me, where I have different leagues, but they're all the same setup. I don't have to kind of switch my brain to different things. So that's kind of why, but I'm all in favor for all types of formats.
Lauren, what was the first format you played?
I actually, it was a head-to-head league, but so I was thinking about that actually when I said I'd never played it. It was the first time that I had played, but then I got off of that league. It was okay for me. I didn't really kind of get into it, and but I wouldn't be opposed to kind of going and trying it again.
Trying it,
yeah.
I'm also in 1 points league. I hate points leagues. I can't do it. But it's a home league and it's like fun and it's cheap, so I just do it anyway.
Yeah.
Points are, and it's points head to head actually, to be more specific, which is just brutal.
You're gonna have a conundrum here after you get a taste of the online championships, especially if you win your leagues. You're gonna be like hooked. They're just fantastic drafts. So
I'm sure
balance all these different leagues.
I mean, just even last year, I was hooked off just doing 50s. So I mean, I did pretty well. So I think that kind of got me more into it. But yeah, it's tough with the formats, and it's like it's a lot. Definitely need to cut down next year. All right, let's talk about something that you do at FTN. You do something called VDP. Can you explain what that is, Vlad?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically just Vlad's draft positions. It's something I've been doing for years, and it's basically just me kind of putting out on the table of how I have the players evaluated, and basically, I use kind of create my own projections and input these projections into software that I've used for many years. RotoLab, gives you auction values, and so it's basically a comparison. It's my rankings, but in relation to ADP. So you have some idea of like players that, according to me, you should be targeting more or less than the market is. And then, obviously, my reasons, and then you just kind of, there will be spots that you agree on, other, places that you don't. But for the most part, that's kind of been my secret sauce, and just kind of just put it out there for everyone. And unfortunately, it's part of the game. Like when I'm in a league, I was in an online championship a couple times last year I have 2 or 3 guys using it, off my rankings.
I was going to say,
like,
just using it.
Yeah. And like, I'm just sniping my guys. Like, what can I do? And then you put out the Fab article, and then like they're taking it's part of the game. It's fine. It's, I love it. It makes me, challenges me even more. So I got to get, but the most important part is I got to be transparent. I got to put it all out there.
Absolutely.
I got to feels like, like certain players that I love this year, like, Brandon Belt or Cody Bellinger, I feel, might have nice years. I can't hold that in. You know what I mean? I'm not in that position to do that. I got to, put it out there, and I'll live and die with it. Right. So if they end up stinking, people want to give me crap. That's part of the gig too.
It's tiered, right? You do it by tiers, I think, or you do it by dollar value.
It's
like
both.
Sections.
It's both.
Okay.
It's sectioned off. It's based on a 12 team, basically like the online championship. So it's the top 30 rounds and the 12 teamers. And then every week I adjust. So, you've got your sort of blocked off by like groups of 6, like half rounds. And then, like something changes either in the preseason or whatever, like those guys will then, move up, and I'll show that movement. Like, this player has moved up 1 round. If somebody wants to ask why, would explain it. But lately, the last few weeks, I'm doing my weekly updates. It's more like just me as I'm writing and researching, I find new things that make me adjust, personally. Like I'll dig into something and I find something I like about Logan Gilbert. And then to me, it just doesn't make sense that he's like in the same kind of range with other guys in that range. And for me, then you put it into the formula of 5x5 categories, and it just kind of spits out a higher dollar value. So I'm like, okay, I like this guy more than his range. And then of course the guys with the huge variances, like a Brandon Belt for me, who's ADP of like 212, comes out to me at like 140. So it doesn't mean I'm necessarily drafting him at 140, but I'll try to usually get him before his ADP. And then of course some people will hop on board with that. And that's a good example of an injury risk guy, right? Because he's really never healthy, always finds some reason to kind of get hurt. So that's one of my type of risks that I'll take. And more so like a corner infielder, right? Because usually at that point I have my first baseman by the time I'm in, the 20th round. But at that point, kind of, take a stab. And then in other teams, he may end up being my first baseman, but then I have to automatically adjust. If I got a Belt, I want to make sure I always also have maybe like a Mancini or a Gurriel, or I have some, so I'm not kind of left standing, kind of left dry if he does end up getting hurt.
I guess I'm not that risk averse because I have a lot of Belt
so
far, and him and Donaldson, because I feel like I know they obviously both don't have the best health track record, but their underlying metrics are just really good, and they both can really hit as long as they're in the lineup. And as your CI or utility, it's like a no brainer to me.
When you can build for it too. I mean, it's not. It's like what the limit is there with them, but you can build around it. So.
Yeah, and there's a huge difference between taking those type of risks in the second round, right? Like a DeGrom, as opposed to these guys that are, going around ADP 200, as long as your whole team isn't filled with them.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I wanted to ask you one more question about VDP. Are you going to update that throughout the season, in season, or so this way people can see kind of how you view guys like for the rest of the year at all, or do you do anything like that, or no, this is just
preseason? Yeah, it's strictly for preseason, and then once the season starts, I mean, I think people have asked for like a monthly rankings or things like that, but we'll cover that in other ways, of course. I'm sure like like you would in terms of ranking the pitchers, two steps and things like that. So at that point it's just kind of before the last week of the preseason, it's kind of like, okay, here's my final list. This is what I'm going to draft with, and just kind of going from there.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So we're going to finish the episode off. So we're all going to make gut predictions here. So just one player, I guess essentially a bold take, I guess, right? Is that what you consider a gut? Yeah. I mean, yeah. So I guess we'll, and then we could come back to this episode and make fun of each other when none of these work out. We'll start with you first, though, Vlad.
Man, I didn't really. I have just so many. I didn't really think of it. I didn't know we were talking about a player, so I was gonna get more creative. I mean, just one random thought is that like Texas Rangers and Seattle Mariners are just gonna have a lot of values. They're like a couple of teams that are sort of these sneaky. A lot of later round guys that I think will kind of will perform well and sort of out earn their draft spots. So those are two teams I'm kind of targeting late. I was thinking back, and I've talked about it before, but kind of like the Diamondbacks a few years ago, where there were guys like just underappreciated guys like AJ Pollock and David Peralta, who were just going after the 15th round. They're just always, even Adam Eaton, they're always delivering value. And for me, the fact that the Texas Rangers have added one of the two San Francisco Magic men. It was Donnie Ecker and Justin Veal were basically the masterminds behind the what's been happening in San Francisco offensively last year. One of those guys now the offensive coordinator, I guess. It's kind of like a new position for them for the Rangers. So some of those guys, like, if you get a season of health from Willie Calhoun, he can end up being fantastic. Like maybe Marcus Semien isn't as much of a, maybe he does repeat to some extent. And maybe Corey Seager stays healthy and has like an MVP season. So a lot of good, I think, that can come out of there. So I like some of those Rangers. As far as just like one simple bold take, I mean, I don't know, maybe this is boring, but like, Tim Anderson leads the league in runs and returns, borderline first round value. I'll go with that.
I feel like he's always undervalued in a way. Like, I know he's going pretty high in drafts, but I get him every year, and I feel like the ADP is not adjusted yet to him still. All right, Lauren, what about you?
I'm really buying into Rowdy Tellez this year. I mean, I'm buying into some of the power gains he made, and I know there he has, there has been some, buzz about him, but he's still sitting around ADP 300, and I don't know. I think that he will outperform that, and I'm kind of buying into, this big, I think, power middle of the order bat. Now you've got the DH, and so I don't know. I think that all works well for him this season. So I like Rowdy Tellez a lot.
How many home runs do you think?
Since it's going to have to be bold, I'm going to say he's going to be pushing 30. So
nice.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Mine is Sonny Gray's a top 10 pitcher. And it's really just because I think if he stays healthy, he has the strikeout rate to do it. And I feel like he's kind of being forgotten about and kind of left way down there at ADP. So I think he's a good grab.
I was going to say, I think the magic formula to actually not being bold and coming to fruition is him going to a contender, right? If he gets out of that bandbox, he can put up ridiculous numbers. So I like it. I like Tellez for 30 too.
Seems brutal. All right. So before we go, Vlad, can you just tell everyone where to follow you and anything you got coming up on the website?
Yeah, ftnfantasy.com. Can find all of our work, draft guide, lots of cool articles coming out. And I think everybody, I think for the most part knows where to find me. Other than that, I just wanted to shout out, I'm wearing my pitcher list shirt for the first time. For those who don't know, Emily Walden, somebody that I met a few years ago at Baseball HQ, unfortunately is has breast cancer. And so there's a fantastic GoFundMe set up that a friend of hers set up, and definitely, Emily Walden, GoFundMe, you will be able to find it, can donate. You can also buy the Pitching Ninja shirt in pink from RotoWare. And fantastic minor league writer, knows the Tigers really well, learned some great stuff about some of those players a few years ago when I met her. And so just rooting for her for a very speedy recovery.
Lauren, you have one, don't you?
I have one as well. Yep. Okay. And nice. Completely echo everything Vlad says. And I think that it's actually been nice to see the fantasy baseball community really step up, I think, for her. And it's been great to see. And I'm happy that we're all doing that. So, yep.
Yeah, a lot of people got behind her, which is always awesome to see. Whenever a community like ours does something like that, it's always a good thing.
Yeah.
Vlad, real quick, I didn't mention it in your intro. Shout out your podcast.
Oh yeah, the FTN Fantasy Baseball Podcast. We usually comes out on Wednesday mornings. My partner in crime, Matthew Davis, Matty Wood on Twitter. We just have a lot of fun. We're both from Southern California. We've kind of known each other for a while, met at events, and just kind of getting a good flow. It's been a while since I've kind of, I've been guesting on podcasts for years, been hesitant to just commit to something weekly, but just kind of getting in the grind of it is fantastic. Preparing show outlines, things like that, and I was talking about it on the pod yesterday. It's really kind of therapeutic, like for an hour we're just talking about this thing we love and we kind of forget about problems of the world. So it's really nice to have a podcast and to talk baseball.
Yeah, I think you guys are a really good pairing. You've done a bunch of episodes together, and I think you joining him was a really good call, and it's one of few podcasts I listen to every week.
Nice. Thank you. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, guys. For those who are listening, make sure you check out our website, spstreamer.com. We have our draft kit out if you want to purchase that. And make sure to check out our membership as well, which comes with our Discord and all that good stuff. You can follow Lauren on Twitter at LK Auerbach. You can follow Vlad on Twitter at RotoGut. And you can follow me on Twitter at spstreamer. And if you do enjoy the show, please make sure you rate and review it on whatever platform you're listening to. I think iTunes, we're at like almost 110 reviews. So if we could keep going up, that'd be awesome. And we will be back next Tuesday night live if you want to watch it with Justin Mason, 10 p.m. Eastern time. Otherwise, that episode will be out on Wednesday. So we'll talk to you guys soon, and thanks for listening.